when I walked in to interview for the position of a deputy, I told him, I said, hey, I said, you've got me till I graduate. Once I graduate, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. I knew that I wanted to go to DPS because eventually I wanted to go to the Rangers. That was the whole purpose for DPS.
Yeah.
Find the thing that you love to do, and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's true.
Better.
Yeah. Welcome back, Blue Grit Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Owen.
And Clinton McNear.
What's going on, man?
Just here, hanging out.
I hear you.
Be with everybody.
Got a packed house today. Got some pretty good guests.
We've got good guests.
Yeah. We wanted to highlight one of them. If you want to intro one of them and talk about what she does for us and the importance of what she does for us.
She is important.
Yes, she is.
So when our attorneys call in and trying to work through billing issues or trying to work through case assignments, or when our members call in trying to get some legal clarification or wills, they deal with Kelly Foreman. And we wanted to be sure that people had a face to put a name with. Hey, Kelly.
The primary job that she does also is wills, and that's something I think that we overlook as an organization of how important they really are. We've heard the horror stories and we've seen the bad side effects of that doing that. That's also one of your probably your largest and most probably tedious jobs as well.
It's one of the smallest things I can do, but like you said, it is.
There's just so many of them.
Yeah, but it's a very big, important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
To have done.
Absolutely.
And yes, we have received phone calls for family members of deceased members who didn't take that step.
Extra mile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I don't know about Clint, but we all appreciate you at Tmpa.
So what does a day in the life of Kelly Foreman look like?
A lot of typing.
A lot of that.
A lot of
That's
typing.
where these guns come
Yes,
in, is from
yeah,
all that
yeah.
typing? All right.
Yeah. I spend some time on the telephone, but a lot of emailing, a lot of typing.
Yeah.
Preparing wills, and processing the admin stuff, legal admin
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Processing the legal, paralegal type work,
Processing
will
cases and
support.
invoices and, wills.
fixing up
And then
all of
there's
our
wills.
errors,
No. Y'all are great.
fixing Tyler's errors.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yes, Tyler,
You can't.
however.
Yeah, you can't ever mess up mine.
And so we do a basic will,
We do it
and then we
basic.
provide the information where they can plug in a medical power of attorney.
We do advanced directives, or we can provide, they're fill in the blank forms.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they're updated by the state. But yes, we can provide those. And they're ready for print. You just print them out, fill them out.
That's awesome.
And it's a basic will. So if you own 3 companies and offshore accounts and 2 yachts, probably not the will for you.
Probably not. Might want to get an estate attorney for that.
But for the normal cop, 2 divorces and a truck and a
I can
gun,
help.
we can do that.
We can help you out.
We can do that.
We certainly can.
That's all I needed for mine was that one.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. Well, we love you. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
So we talked on an earlier episode about people don't update their will and their beneficiaries, and when they pass away, their beneficiary is from 2 exes ago. Mm-hmm. If somebody wanted to update, in addition to do a new will, they could reach out and update or change or redo their will with you.
If we have it on file, I can just pull it up, edit it, update the date, and send it back.
And we do them for member and their spouse?
Yes, correct. Spouses are included.
Excellent.
All right.
Good stuff.
Kelly is the brains and the beauty that keeps this herd of kitty cats moving forward
Yeah.
at all times.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. She told us we had to keep this short because she's busy and doesn't have time for us little people. So thank you for stopping by.
We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, the other guest we have is a good friend of mine that I've known for quite some time. A man that I have so much respect for. Was one of the first DPS sergeants that I met in the East Texas region, based out of Marshall. Former,
Yes.
it's retired Ranger John Vance, but now I did not know that you went to work where you're working now.
Texas and Southwest Cattle Raiders
There
Association.
you go.
Yes, sir.
So you're still maintaining that title of Ranger.
I picked up a new title. It's called Special Texas Ranger. But then again, my mom always said I was special.
Yeah, that's
so
right. That's
I finally
right.
got a title to.
Absolutely, absolutely. We wanted to have you on. So much what Rangers do, as far as the TMPA response of it, is that you have to show up to officer involved shootings, and then that's just a small sliver of what Texas Rangers do. But we wanted to bring you on and talk about you as a person and your career, because it's really you're just a phenomenal person. You brought your lovely wife with you. And I can't tell you how much respect I got for you. I was telling Clint that I've got a good friend of mine coming on who I love and admire. So,
Oh man,
welcome to the Blue Grit stage.
glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Appreciate y'all reaching out.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I thought you were fully retired, so I thought you'd have time for us. Didn't know that you'd went to work.
Yeah, it didn't last very long.
No.
Yeah.
That's what you were telling us before the break.
2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane. Well, tell us. But we kind of start the episodes off of telling us, where you grew up. Tell us about John and who John Vance is.
Well, I graduated from high school at Little Cypress Mauriceeville in Orange, and didn't have I was shoeing horses full time for a living, and took a job working offshore, and enjoyed that, but there was no benefits in either one, and kind of floundered. My father says, "Okay, you got two choices, military or college. Apparently the trade school's not working out for you."
Right.
And he said, "I'll pay for one semester of college. If that's not for you, I've got a friend of mine who's a recruiter. You'll be in." I said, "Man, that's great." So I'm thinking, well, I can party for one semester on my dad's dime, and then go to work.
Absolutely.
Go to the military. Go that route. So enrolled in San Diego State University, and I was there for that one semester. And two things I learned. First of all, not as dumb as I thought it was. I could actually.
Well, you being from Orange,
yeah.
we've got a lot of people on here that are from Orange. So
Yeah, so I was worried I was going to pass. I passed. D's passed, by the way. But number two is that I had spent my short adult life around the backside of a horse or on a oil rig out in the middle of the Gulf Coast, or Gulf of Mexico, with a bunch of nasty smelling
Roughnecks.
Yeah. And now I'm at college, and it's full of beautiful women.
Yeah.
And but I weighed my options, because it's always about weighing your options, right? So I weighed my options. I said, okay, if I go in the military, I'll be back around a bunch of smelly women. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think
100%.
I think I can do this.
Yeah.
So anyway, I graduated from San Diego State University. I worked my way through school. I was working graveyard shift for Walker County Sheriff's Office. Started off in the jail and eventually went on patrol. And so I'd get off work at 6 a.m., go to the house, shower. I was a guy who always went to the 8 a.m. morning classes, that no college kid wanted to go to. I was there because I was still awake.
So you're about 19 at this point?
About 19.
How long did you shoe horses for?
Total is a little over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shoeing horses?
Yes, sir.
No kidding.
Like you got to
And
figure
you
it out.
walk upright.
Yeah, well.
You look healthy and still walk upright.
Well, the first time, right after we got married and I was still shoeing horses, I come in and we were planning on going out to eat. So I come in, of course, my hands are all cut up because I was dealing with a little bronch, And, of course, I smelt like I've been out there all
Dealing
day
with a
long.
bronch,
Yeah, a little bronky. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, let me take a shower real quick, and then, we'll be ready to go. She goes, man, I can't, we're married. My baby's not going to have these cut up hands and have to work this hard. That's ridiculous. I said, well, we got to make a living. I said, here, if you would you make me a deposit slip for these checks? And then when we're in town, we'll deposit it in the bank, So when I got out of the shower and I got back, getting ready to go, she goes, we're going to stop by Walmart, buy you some Band-Aids.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And how long did you do offshore?
Offshore, I worked there for almost a year. We were working on a rig. We were 2 weeks on, not a rig, it was a pumping station, the transfer station. And I worked 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So when I'd hit the beach, then I'd shoot for 2 weeks and then go back and, go for another 2 weeks out there.
Like helo transport out? Mm-hmm. How far out in the ocean were you guys?
We were right at 100 miles, and the rigs that we were, unmanned rigs that we were pulling oil from was right on the shelf, so they were about 150 miles out. So
Wow.
And how old were you living out there doing that with Roughnecks?
I was 17, 18 years old. Yeah,
That's awesome.
It was a different world.
That's some life
awesome.
experience.
Yeah.
You
No
grow
kidding.
up quick that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So can you kind of talk about being around Roughnecks and then working the jail and shooting horses and kind of how that later on in your career, in your law enforcement career, how that helped you out, I guess, later on?
kind of helped me out too.
Probably with work ethic, I would imagine.
Several ways. One is that one thing I will say about the guys that I worked with when I was offshore, it was all business, and we're going to work, and you're not going to slack up. And believe me, they would let you know it if you did. You know,
I can imagine.
I witnessed that. It never happened to me, but I witnessed that, and I thought, well, there's my motivation to keep right on working. You know,
Yep.
And so I learned a lot from that. Of course, you know, start off, I learned the work ethic from my father. You know, you didn't lay in bed, and Saturday mornings was for work. You know, it wasn't for laying up. You know, that sort of thing. But and then funny you mentioned that, the shoeing the horses. I'm around a community that I love. You know, the ranching, you know, Foreman ranching community. So when I retired and I took my second job, I went back into the community that I'd left. You know,
cool.
so it was
Full
nice
circle.
to go back.
Yeah, you're basically stealing money from the state. I mean, if you want to be honest with you, I mean, you're getting paid to do something you love. You love being a Texas Ranger and you love working for DPS, but I mean, you legitimately are going into a profession of a world that you literally loved and have a passion for.
You know, the old saying, and my dad used to say it all the time, but it was, if you know, you find the thing that you love to do, and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's true, 100%.
One thing that was kind of a neat concept, the Rangers did it, and now now with the Cattle Raisers Association, the same thing. When I went to work for the Rangers, you know, I was used to the structured, I was used to the scheduling, I was used to when you're on, when you're off, that sort of thing. And I asked that question. They're like, just go to work when you go to work, you know, which means instead of clocking on at 8 a.m., I'm going on at 6 a.m., you know, and I'm working past 5 just because it was me scheduling my own schedule, you know. And
Handle your business.
Yeah, and they're getting more product out of us than if you give me a schedule. You know?
Yep.
Absolutely, I agree.
So worked at went to Sam Houston State. While you're there, you're working for Walker County SO.
Yes, sir.
Working in the jail.
Started off in the jail, working graveyard shift. Then I went to one summer they put me through a academy at A&M, and then I came back and I was on patrol for about 2 years, I guess, before I graduated. When I walked in to it was the interview for the sheriff for the position of a deputy, you know, I told him, I said, hey, I said, you've got me till I graduate. Once I graduate, this is my goal. This is what I want to do, you know. And
you knew at that point you wanted to go to DPS?
I knew I wanted to go to DPS. I was kind of floundering as to where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be in law enforcement. And I ran into Barry Caver, which was the ranger at that time, was the ranger sergeant there in Huntsville. And they were working a tremendous case. I mean, I remember the case to this day. And I was being held over from graveyard to day shift just for a couple hours because somebody in the jail was coming in late. So I was a jailer. They're coming down the hallway. It's the sheriff and chief deputy and a couple of detectives and the ranger. And they're coming down the hallway for an interview or whatever they were going to do. Of course, I'm a graveyard shift jailer, so, you know, you don't get any lower on the bottom of the rung than what I am. So, you know, I hit the wall and allowed them to pass, you know, as they were passing through. And I got the nods and the hellos as it passed. Barry Caver stopped, turned around, stuck his hand out, and he said, I haven't met you yet. You know, you know, this is a Texas Ranger.
Jailer.
Yeah, in the middle of a case, and I'm a jailer, you know, graveyard shift jailer at that. And so we shook hands, and of course, like I say, I was shoeing full time as well. So when we shook hands, you know, he goes, do you work for a living? Because my hands were rough, you know. I told him I was a horseshoer and stuff. And well, about 6 months later, I happened to run into him again. No one else was around. It just him and I just bumped into each other, and he said, John Vance, the horseshoer, how are you doing? Of course, he remembers names,
right.
And, you know, association. I wish I could do that. You know what I mean, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so he was able to catch that, and just the mere fact that he took the time to visit with me, you know, when I was nobody, you know, and I you know, again, going back to my father had a higher respect for a person in the janitorial service working in a large building than the CEO, because if that guy did his job excellent, you never saw him, you never knew him. You
never heard about it.
Never heard about it. Let him mess up one time.
You're going to know it.
Yeah. But he did a great job with he was humble and you know, didn't want the claim fame, you know.
And it seems so insignificant, but the effect it had on you. Mm-hmm. I was 19, 20 years old working at the jail in Plano. And I can tell you to this day, the detectives and the cops that would come in there and treated me like I was one of them, checked on me, asked me how I was doing, and the guys that came in and treated me like I was a sex offender. You know, you're just a dumb little jailer. And I can tell you to this day, the people that were really, really good to me, and it wasn't that they went out of their way, they just treated me good. They didn't treat me like, shut up, you dumb 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And you're right. I remember that, being in that jail. Remember who comes through. Another gentleman came through, and I don't know his name, but he was a U.S. Marshal, and he was coming to pick up someone. And he walked in and just, cool breeze, visit, talk, called me by name once he found my name, and asked for my assistance on different things. He just treated me like
a human.
Yeah.
Like what?
That's cool.
Like I guess one of the guys.
Yeah.
Which goes back to where I was telling him this, and it's not. It's going to be hard to say this, I guess, but some professions and some departments have that, stigma, and they have that perception, and they have that, you being a ranger, when you even when you're a DPS sergeant, DPS itself kind of has that mentality, at least, that troopers are kind of hard to get past, peel that one layer off.
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing I've always loved about you. You've always been so humble and so approachable. And that's one thing I was telling him. I was like, man, this is a cop's ranger. This is a cop's cop.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not just blowing smoke, John. That you and Josh Jenkins comes to mind when I talk about stuff like that. And, that's one thing I've always loved about you, is even when you made ranger, you still would stop. Hey, how you doing? And I've always told him that, and always had a lot of respect for you. But it goes back to where you grew up at, and how you were raised. So it's pretty neat.
So you said working in the jail, you were kind of floundering. What was it that kind of made you laser in on DPS? Was it?
Well, whenever after that chance meeting with Barry Caver, and the fact that he impressed me as much as I said, well, what does it take for me to get there? How do I get from here to there? What is my steps? And I started researching it, and that's whenever I knew that I wanted to go to DPS, because eventually I wanted to go to the Rangers. That was the whole purpose for DPS.
Yeah.
And so I made my statement to the sheriff. I said, I'm going to give you 110%. I'm going to be your guy. But the minute I graduate, and whenever DPS accepts me, I'll turn in my 2 weeks. That you don't have me for the rest of your career. You got me for this time frame. Afterwards, a couple of years later, after I was a trooper at that point, he came back to me and he goes, man, he said, it kind of made me mad. You don't want my job. But then I got thinking, well, darn, at least I know where I stand. And that's, and he knew, that I was going to go there. So anyway, was accepted to DPS Academy.
What year was that?
95. A95 was the academy I went through. And so back then, if you were living in East Texas, whenever you came out of the academy, we're sending you to West Texas. We'll send you as far away from home as possible.
You know why DPS did that, or is it just because they didn't want you to be around your hometown? Or
I think really what they wanted was not to have that hometown influence.
Yep.
Learn to
that neutral party type mentality.
And I really think that's
Yeah.
I just said yes, sir.
We have a lot of young listeners, and we have some explorers that write in.
Oh,
I think
great.
it's cool that at 19 or 20, you didn't have a short-term goal. You already knew my end goal is to be a ranger. You weren't even looking like, well, in 2 years, maybe I'd be a sergeant, or maybe you knew you had a goal of 10 or 12 years, however long it'd take to serve in DPS to end up in a ranger. I think that's super important.
Yep.
Is if you're going to map out a short-term goal, be thinking about what the long-term one is, because people are normally pretty short-sighted. And we don't hear that often on the show, that at 19 or 20 or whatever it was, you knew, I'm not in this for the tomorrow game. I'm in this. I'm going to end up here. That's pretty impressive, because you don't hear it a lot. Most 20-year-olds, when I was 20, all I was thinking about was tomorrow.
Yes.
Or where am I going to get some Coors Light at?
Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
Where's tomorrow at?
Yep.
Another thing, kind of a little bit of wisdom that was given to me, I'd love to pass on, was that, keep your mouth shut. We had a lot of guys that I'm going to be a ranger. Well, there's a lot of steps to get there.
Yep.
No, I want to be the best trooper. I want to be the best highway patrol sergeant. And then I want to be the best ranger. And I know I have to get past this goal in order to, achieve this goal. And so let me be the best where I'm at, right now.
Solid advice.
Yep. Like showing up to boot camp with a Marine tattoo already on.
Absolutely.
Slow your roll there, Pilgrim.
Yep. Yeah. You got to make it through past me first.
Yep.
Yeah.
So A95.
A95.
How long was Academy back then?
6 months.
And you all live on site, right?
Yes, sir. We had weekends off, providing you didn't screw up.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was able to have every weekend off.
That's a plus.
Yeah. Well, I've learned real quick. Of course, I wasn't in the military, so and it's a paramilitaristic type boot camp. So I learned real quick everything when you're in line. So do exactly what the guy in front of you is doing. If he screws up, there's somebody behind you doing the very same thing you're doing. So you're going to have to figure it out, or you're going to screw up too, and it's going to cause that guy to screw up. So yeah, but it was really interesting going through that, and what it developed was like anything else, it develops a brotherhood. And upon graduating, I mean, you've got, we were scattered to 4 corners of the state of Texas, so you had somebody somewhere.
Well, I've always liked to ask about. I've asked Josh the same thing, but whenever you went to the academy, and a lot of the Rangers who were cops were deputies. I don't know why that is before they were troopers, but. And we're starting to see that a lot now. Yep. But what was it like to be a cop and then go through DPS's academy and learn the DPS way? Was it a difficult transition, or was that hard for you to get over that? Because we always been told, and I just like I teach my kids, I would rather them not know something, a subject, and then me teach them that way, versus them know how to do it beforehand and me have to correct it.
Bringing your bad habit.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's firearms. Firearms 101. I hope when you come in, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And let me show you what I've been taught is the correct way. And that way you're shooting, you don't bring in all the old bad habits. When I started the academy, again, the sound advice that I was given from a trooper, there in Huntsville, keep your mouth shut, stay in the middle of the pack. It's yes sir, no sir. Even if it offends you, it's yes sir, no sir. You just got to make it through the 6 months. It's a building process. So when I got in, again, with all of this vast knowledge of 2 years will give you as a police officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was almost ready for graduate school. I got in and I get taught this, topic, and I end up most of the time I was like, oh, shit, I didn't realize that, because it wasn't one of these, hey, here's the law, and then we move on. Here's the law. This is the reason why this is the law. This is what made the law. This is why this has taken place. And it, that eventually it's subject to change, but at least now, why you're enforcing what you're enforcing.
Foundation.
Yeah, the foundation behind it. So that was very interesting. And of course, all the driving, the shooting, the fighting, everything we did in there. It was.
Y'all still did some smoky rounds and some boxing back then, and
there was an individual that didn't make it through the academy, but he was, I would say, bullying when he got into the fighting portion. It's kind of a pick a partner deal. So I'd grab you and say, "Hey, we're going to partner up," and then you and I'd be off the side saying, "Hey, man, take it easy on my left shoulder," and
brother-in-law.
Yeah, brother-in-law. We're gonna do it. But
let's just it's not the Super Bowl.
We're all in the same family here. And this individual picked the weakest one and was just pushing over him, And of course, we were doing what we could to try to solve that problem without our counselors being made aware. And we were failing. But counselors come in and said, "No, boys, just leave it on that. That's okay. Stand up. Are you okay? Okay. Well, don't do that no more." Where they were screaming at us before, and now we're getting this kinder, gentler, and that's that reverse psychology. You're like, oh, heck, So fighting, when it's time to fight, they'd call your name, they'd call my name, and I'd be suiting up over here, and you'd be suiting up over there, and we'd get together, and, we're friends, but here we go, we got to fight. And they called his name, and then they go, okay, I need you, and you suit up. I was like, oh, shit. Oh, shoot. Here you go.
To get salty.
Here we go.
And it was one-on-one, and then they'd stop and they'd go, you look like you're getting winded. Here, we step aside, next one up, And he's like, hey, I'm getting winded too. I don't care.
Wear him out.
By the time it was over with, he said, if you'll just slide that piece of paper in front of me that I need to sign to exit this place, I will. And he was gone. So
there you go.
He rang the bell.
He rang the bell.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where'd you end up after the academy with West Texas? What town? Right as I started the academy, like I say, 6 months long, we had a mass retirement in DPS. It's that 20-year cycle. And so we had this huge mass retirement, which created a mass promotion, process. And overnight, Huntsville became a demand station. They needed to fill bodies in Huntsville. Again, keep my mouth shut and sit over in the corner, and finally, whenever it come time for us to, our dream sheet is what they always called it. Right.
Where would you like to go? We're going to send you here, but where would you like to go? We'd like for you to feel good about yourself, And so I put Huntsville Region 2, and when time came for the captains to come in and assign us, I got called to go to Region 2. I thought, oh man, to talk to that.
They screwed up.
To talk that, yeah. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, stay in the middle of the pack.
Stay in the middle pack. And so I got in there, and they said, so captain, which it was Bob Martin, which was he was a troopers captain.
I've heard that from so many people.
All he had to do was mention, and the world would launch.
Yep.
He was just. We would go to, we'd, like what they say, charge hell with a bucket of water. Yeah, we'd do it for him. He said, look, I'm gonna, treat y'all like grown men and women. I have these openings. Who wants this position? Who wants this open? Who wants this open? When it comes to Huntsville, and me and another person had both raised our hand for this one position that's open. I'm like, shit,
Suit up.
Yeah, here we go. And so he pulled the names, and he looked, and he goes, okay. He said, he called that individual, and he said, you've been assigned to Iran. John, you've got Huntsville. Well, what I didn't know is that particular person was doing some mouthing in the background, and the counselors caught word of that, and like, oh, you think you're going where you want to go? Okay, well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Another lesson in life, keep your mouth shut. So anyway, I was fortunate enough I was able to come back. Kathy had 1 more year, little over a year, I think, left in school and college there. So that's where we had met. Actually, we met at the First Baptist Church. Yeah, I was with my girlfriend at the time when we met. But that's where we met at.
So how many started your academy? How many graduated?
We started. I'm gonna get this wrong. We started with 180, like 180. We graduated 106. I always thought that was. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. We graduated. I mean, they first day of the academy, everybody gets a number. Depending on your, it's all by alphabetical order. But I ended up with being a V.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm number 109, and we graduated 106, and I'm number 109. So it always looks like I just barely made it. No, but we graduated 106 out of the academy, and when we have a self-appointed class historian, and every time one of us retired, he would put out on our little Facebook group, talking about, well, we're now down to so many, and we're down to like 20 or 21 that's still still working for DPS now out of the 106. So yeah, that's
cool.
I didn't mean to sidetrack from your wife and your girlfriend meeting at church.
Yes,
that was a great story too.
Cut that right there. Yeah. I'm glad you did cut in. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So you went to Huntsville. Kathy's got a year left in college.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you stay in Huntsville, and what point did you get to promote? I mean, there was a kind of a mass exit at right when you graduated, but how did that look out?
Did the sheriff appreciate having you back?
Yeah.
Well, he was. He's when I did see him, come in, wear my bright, shiny, uniform,
absolutely.
Walk in. He goes, "You're just another deputy to me, baby." He said, "I got your back."
Yeah.
He said, "If they call you on the radio and say there's a cow out, and they call you, just know I'm sending you, sir. Yes, sir."
Yeah. Keep your mouth shut.
Whatever you need, sir. Let's see. In 2001, 2001, I I've got my historian over here because I get my dates right. We promoted to, and I say we because it was a family
team.
affair.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
We promoted to marshal as a highway patrol sergeant. So typical DPS fashion. She's at work. We're in Huntsville. She's at work, and I'm working night shift. So, it's daytime, and I'm piddling in my shop. Telephone calls. It's a 512 area code, and we'd already went through this whole selection process. You're waiting on that phone call. If you don't get a phone call in the back then the teletype, when the teletype came out, that's when you knew who made it. But if your telephone if your telephone rings, then congratulations, you made it. Some major, from Austin, who I did not know, never will know, is the one who called me. And he said, congratulations, you're, highway patrol sergeant. He said, you got a choice of 2 duty stations. I said, yes, sir. He said, Uvalde and Marshall. I said, yes, sir. That's okay. I said, generally, I don't make a life-altering decision like this with at least contacting my wife, He said, pick it now. I'm like, shit.
Oh, my gosh.
I said, well, sir, I do not know where Marshall, Texas is, but I do know where Uvalde is. I'll take Marshall. Nothing ill of Uvalde. I just wasn't a South Texas boy. I'm an East Texas boy. So we moved to Marshall, and we were there 7 years. January of 2008 is when I promoted and left Marshall, went to Sulphur Springs.
Wow.
How long as a trooper before you made sergeant?
I was 5-6 years, I guess.
And then how long as a sergeant before picking up ranger?
Right at 6 years as well. So
good follow through with the years. I mean, it's just like 6 and 6.
Yeah, and so it's kind of. I started, of course. I knew where my goal was, and I knew that I was eligible, and so with prior law enforcement experience, I knew at 6 years I'd be eligible for to start taking the test for Ranger, and I did. I didn't stand a snowball's chance, whenever I took that test, but I wanted it, and I wanted to take that test. And we'd tested several times, and I'll back up and say this. One of the times I did make it, I was very confident, very sure of myself, going through the oral board, and they asked me a question about lying to a suspect, in an interview. Mm-hmm. Well, I had just completed a very large investigation involving truth and honesty, and it was a employee type investigation.
Yep.
And anyway, so I'm sitting there scared to death. I'm nervous. I'm going to say the right thing, and they asked me this question, and so I go, I have no reason to lie to them. I'll tell them the truth, and by God, and I gave them this party line. It was one of the first questions. So they're set up interviews, the men all the way around. There's 2 Ranger captains sitting. One's the sitting chair, and then the other one is going to be the next chair on the next board. That's kind of how they rotate it through. And being a good Ranger over there, he threw me a lifeline. I didn't swat at it. And so he said, thank you, and moved me to the next guy. And the next guy said, well, before I ask my 2 questions, I'd like to go back to this first question. I thought, I'm done, And so we went all the way around. And they thanked me for my time and patted me on the back and sent me out the door, And I was about, it was here in Austin, I was about 10 miles out of town. My phone rings. And it's the Ranger that was over Marshall, Ronnie Griffith at the time.
He's a mountain of a man.
Huge man. And he said, are you done with your interview, boy? Remember how Ronnie was.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He said, how'd you do? And I said, well, I think, I did all right. I stumbled. And he goes, hey, you stupid SOB. He said, you can lie to a crook.
Yeah.
And I went, within the 10 minutes it took me to get in my car and start driving home, he'd already gotten word from the board what I had did. So I thought, okay, all right. So the next time I went to the board, the one I made it on, I'm sitting there, and the captain, who is now the chair, who was the assistant on the previous board, I walk in, sit down, and they thank me for my time and appreciate, the little formalities. And he says, before we get started, I'd like to ask a question. Well, all of them start grinning. I'm like, I said, yes, sir. And he said, do you find any reason why you'd want to lie to a crook? I said, sir, I'd lie to that son of a buck in a heartbeat. He goes, thank you very much. Let's go.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Have a good day. That's awesome. So, for those that don't know, you were the sergeant at Marshall for many years, and you had a, in my opinion, you had a pretty, your crew there. You had the north. You were on the north zone, right?
Yes, sir.
You had which covers Marion County and then the half of Harrison.
Yes, sir.
And then at that point, then you transition over to Sulphur Springs.
Yeah.
So you've never been to Sulphur Springs as far as live there and kind of a part of that community. What's it like moving to the town and because I always joke around with the Rangers that I've worked with in East Texas about, I mean, there's not a Ranger Academy. You don't sprinkle Ranger dust on it and then you just automatically know all this stuff. But in hindsight, when you show up, you're new to the area, so they just think, oh, we got a Ranger. You know, this guy knows how to investigate homicides and everything else.
He's got it all figured out.
He's got it all figured out. So if you want to kind of explain just how that process works and how, I mean, you really can't admit your faults because you're a Texas Ranger. I mean, let's call it what it is. Yeah. And so you're already kind of held to that pedestal. So what does that feel like when you're like, oh, shit.
Walking in.
I've got it here.
Remind me, because I'll get sidetracked, but I want to talk about the move when we got there as well. The December up till December the 31st, I had the Highway Patrol phone, you know, and back then your phone number didn't go with you. You know, you just didn't keep your phone. You know, that turned over to the next Highway Patrol sergeant, you know, that sort of thing. And my phone was ringing 24/7, you know, as a Highway Patrol sergeant, you know, because what happened at 2 o'clock in the morning while I was fat, dumb, and happy sleeping in bed, what happened on the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, if I don't fix that problem before 8 a.m., it's my fault.
Yeah.
You know, it's not his fault. It's my fault. It stops with me. So turn that phone over, pick up the Ranger phone, which happened to be a brand new phone, so no one had that number. And I kept checking. It was an old flip phone. I kept checking the phone because thinking, is the battery good? You know, because it's not ringing.
This Ranger stuff's easy.
Yeah, sure. I got this made. You know? And I had a guy call me from one of my counties that I haven't even gotten there yet, okay, at this point. And the phone rings. He goes, hey, are you the new Ranger? I said, yes. He goes, oh, okay. Run into a little problem. This is what I got. And it's one of our detectives. And so he's, and he lays out this problem, and he lays out how he feels like it needs to be handled. What do you think? I go,
sure.
Yeah. I said, would you normally handle it that way? Yeah. So, yeah, sounds good to me. You know, hung the phone up, you know, I did my Ranger stuff, right? And it wasn't until several months later, I got to where I knew everybody and everything. And this guy walks up and he goes, man, he's have some sound advice, man. I certainly appreciate it. It was good to have you there. And I was like, fella, I didn't have a clue. I was just going with the flow. You said it, that sounded good to me too, you know. But anyway.
That's funny.
So in Garland in 1999, I made detective. And the lieutenant that I ended up going to work for at the time, as a patrolman, you had to call and ask questions. You had to call and ask. You had to call and ask questions all the time. This patrol lieutenant, he had no use for me because I was a dumb patrolman. So I get made a detective.
Overnight,
you're a detective. So I go up to CID my very first day, and they said, hey, somebody's got to be on call for property crimes. I'm like, oh, I'm a brand new detective.
Pick me.
So, of course, all the old heads are like, yeah, you can have my call out. So I get home. It's like 9 o'clock at night. Phone rings. It's the lieutenant. Well, it's my old patrol lieutenant who thought I was the dumbest moron ever lived. Hey, you there, McNair? I said, yes, sir. Let me tell you what we got. It's okay. Stolen 18-wheeler from Garland, recovered in Dallas. The tractor is at one location with 2 guys in custody. Trailers in another location with stolen goods. They got 2 in custody selling all the stuff out of the back. DPD's over there, DSO's over there. They have 5 in custody, 2 locations. What do you want me to do?
Oh, you're asking me now.
I was like, 24 hours ago, I was the dumbest moron you've ever met. What do you want us to do on this, detective? I was like, can I call you back in just a minute? So I call another detective.
Give me just a second.
Yeah. I call another detective, but I get off the phone. I told him why. I was like, wasn't that interesting? Because yesterday I had to ask to go to the bathroom because I was too dumb to go to the bathroom by myself. And now he's calling wanting me to tell him how to handle a situation. I'm like,
That's awesome.
in 24 hours, nothing's changed. I'm still the same ugly dude I was 24. There's nothing's changed at all
what's changed today?
That's awesome.
I'm walking down the hall when I finally get to Huntsville, and I'm walking down the sheriff's department's hallway there, and this detective, which is now the sheriff there, Lewis Tatum, great guy. He was a detective at that point. He steps out and he goes, "You the new ranger?" I mean, my leather squeaks when I'm walking. That's how new I am, right? And I said, "Yes, sir." He's, "Hey, come here. And he put me in the office room with him. About that time, they bring an inmate in, set him down. And he said, I said, "Well, what do you need me to do?" He said, "Just sit there." That's okay. And so
where this is going.
Yeah. He goes, "Look," he says, "Gone a little too far now." He says, "We've got the ranger involved now." He says, "I didn't want the ranger involved, but he's here now." And so I'm over here taking notes, I'm doodling is what I'm doing, but it looks really good. And so we're going down that line, or he's going down that line, excuse me. And it was a pedophile is what it was, young man pedophiling younger children. And about halfway through the line, about the whole line to a crook, he goes into that whole spiel of, well, be honest with you, I saw a picture of her, and she's pretty hot for a 13-year-old. I mean, she's pretty hot, And that guy goes, "Oh yeah," he's falling in, and ends up giving us everything. But about halfway through that, I've got this detective who I don't know, and I'm brand new, and I know that I'm supposed to be doing something, and he's talking about how good looking this 13-year-old child is. I start taking notes on him. Like,
what is going on here?
Who am I working here? Both of them or one? But anyway.
You're a little too convincing there, detective.
Yeah, but that was my indoctrination to it. And I was told real quick, he said, "Find a solid investigator. I don't care what agency he's with. Find a solid one that loves to work and that wants to, has a burning desire to solve the crime. Find that guy and work with him. We're going to send you to more schools than you'll ever possibly imagine going to. But starting off, work hard with that guy." And that's what I did. There were several guys, but Lewis was one of them. So
that's awesome.
Tune in next week for part 2.
Of all of the officer-involved shootings that I've been a part of, one time it didn't go good for the officer. And I have a spill. I sit down and I talk to the grand jury. I said, "This is going to take," I said, "You're used to somebody walking in, giving you a case and walk out." I said, "I need to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of understanding." And I explained to them how we operate, what we do. And then I explained to them, I said, "You're going to hear language in here. Most of 99% of the time, you're going to hear language in these videos. You've got to put yourself in that officer's standpoint." And I'll bring it back to them and say, "Hey, these are family men.
Yeah.
They're standing on the right side. They're withholding Romans chapter 13. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing,